Dr. Stein, where do you stand on nuclear power?
Oh, nuclear power is too expensive, dangerous, uninsurable, and doesn't have the right timeline. So all of that remains true in spite of the wall of propaganda that is being manufactured by the nuclear industry. Ralph Nader did a really terrific podcast. He does, the Ralph Nader radio hour. And his last podcast last week was a really terrific expose on the actual track record. These so-called small modular plants are not a solution by any means, and it's really dangerous what's going on now in the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a whole lot of money behind them and behind selling them, like selling these nuclear reactors which generate fuel for nuclear weapons. So we're basically promoting nuclear weapons proliferation now through the Inflation Reduction Act, which puts a whole lot of money now behind marketing these small modular nuclear reactors. Nuclear reactors need to be phased out and shut down, and we certainly should not be building new ones in the same way that nuclear weapons, they need to be shut down. And they actually are illegal now in terms of most nations in the world. This is a treaty that's been brought into force by a vote at the United Nations, and we need to get on board because we are all in the target hairs on nuclear weapons right now.
So what would be your alternative to getting us off of coal and natural gas, which is obviously the biggest, especially fracking, which is as big of an environmental disaster as anything? And whether you believe in climate change or not, fracking to me solely alone, the destruction it does in terms of man-made earthquakes, water contamination, not being able to build sustainable living communities or anything near fracking sites. That is, that's the non-starter of non-starters. I have a different opinion about nuclear, but that's okay.
I liked your answer, Dr. Stein, and quite honestly, I am of the small, sustainable, regenerative degrowth mentality myself, and recognize that maybe we don't all get to keep living exactly how we're living in order to continue functioning on a livable planet. But that's just me. But I understand everyone seems to have all these ways. How are we going to be able to keep up with our lifestyle? How will we do it? You won't. So that's sort of my thought.
Add to that, the issue here should not be our lifestyle as we happen to define it at the moment. Right. It really ought to be our quality of life, our happiness, the richness of our relationships and the health of our communities and ourselves. And that has been shown to have very little relationship to, the cost of your lifestyle and so on. So yeah, absolutely. But even without degrowth, even just like sort of plateauing where we are, the most cost-effective way to fund this, in fact, is through conservation and through renewable energy, which is now cost competitive. It's absolutely and in fact, with coal and and methane. So yeah, there's every reason now to do the right thing. It's also the pragmatic thing, and it's the healthy, and it's the only sustainable thing. So yeah, it's absolutely doable. I think it's mostly the power of the PR industry for nuclear and fossil fuels that has people thinking otherwise.
Yeah, I think people also in Western culture are very self-serving and very selfish and are not as concerned with the collective as you see in other places. And so it's a lot harder to get people to care about something bigger than themselves, I think, when you have this pull yourself up from your bootstraps kind of like ideology. And it's very frustrating. I don't like any of it. Honestly, we had a woman on from Ireland who raises a certain breed of wild goats, and then they eat all the brush to prevent the wildfires. And so we had her, that. I'm all about those kinds of things. So then we had her on to talk about that. And apparently they're doing that. But that's what, we need to be finding a way to coexisting with the earth and the environment in a way that doesn't abuse anybody or anything. And I feel like until we do that, we're circling the drain.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's totally to be celebrated now how this can be done. This is actually doable, achievable, no apologies needed, I think it's just like the predatory nature of the fossil fuel, empire and the nuclear empire that deludes people into thinking otherwise, but this is totally doable. And the thing about, do we have to be a do-gooder, mentality? In my view, you don't, because the harms of fossil fuel are so pervasive. Even forget about climate change. Just, there are somewhere around 9 million people who die premature deaths every year from fossil fuel. So we pay a price, and it's not just like, asthma and lung disease. It's cancer, it's pollution of our water supplies, like the fracking. There's so many ways. And we are so sick in this country, our longevity relative to other countries, other developed countries, is really bad. It was declining for several years. Now it's kind of inching its way back up, but it's way behind. But even that aside, we survive really sick. We have so many chronic diseases, and we're just not healthy. And it's very hard to lead a fulfilling, life, and a productive life, and the life that you deserve, if you are carrying around all sorts of chronic diseases at the same time. And, just getting our agriculture system and our food supply back on track would also do wonders for, for regenerative agriculture and bringing down CO2. And, these solutions converge. And when you start solving one of these problems, it contributes to solving the others. So we just need to be thinking, in my view, just thinking in terms of the public interest. We all benefit here.